To live for the future is an indefinite postponement of life. You go through your education in a whole series of steps. The word in Latin gradus means a step. So you have first grade, second grade, third grade, and finally you become a graduate. You have gone along the steps, but you are still doing it. So when you finally become successful, as the president of your corporation, you have a funny feeling of being cheated. You climbed the stairway and you got to the top, and there is nowhere else to go. And since you were never taught to live in the present, you do not know how to. So an insurance salesman comes around and says, listen, I have the very thing for you, a retirement program. Because when you are 65, you will drop out of the system, and then you will really be able to enjoy yourself, despite your prostate trouble, menopause, false teeth and everything else. And the art of living in the eternal now is not taught in our educational system. It is not taught because it is thought of as being feckless and irresponsible. It is not irresponsible at all. It is everybody's duty to enjoy themselves, because if you do not do that, you become a nuisance. You become aggressive, you become a robber, you become a thief. You become somebody who is trying to organize the rest of the world. That is to say, a power maniac. Simply because you have not learned the very simple, inexpensive art of living in the present moment. It really does not take an awful lot of energy to maintain a human life. If you really consider what you need to eat, what you need to wear, how much housing you have to have, it comes down to something quite simple. And the simpler it is, the more you have the capacity to enjoy watching a raindrop crawl down a window. But if you watch a raindrop crawl down a window and you think, look at that, everybody says you are crazy. You watching a raindrop fall down a window? Can you not find something more important to do? That means, can you not make more trouble than that? So the mentality that does not recognize the importance of watching a raindrop crawl down a window is the one that is creating the trouble in the world today. They say you are of no value. You are not even human, unless you are changing things, unless you are interfering, unless you are progressing. We confuse growing with progressing. Unless something is happening, a great operation, a new project is going on and you are busy with it, we say, well, you are lazy, you are good for nothing, because you are not working for the future. But Machiavelli says if you are working for the future, you are quite mad. So they do not work for the future. Just like Machiavelli works long enough to make some money, then he knocks off work and he goes to the gambling joint and he gambles or he smokes opium or just generally wanders around and digs the scene. And we say, well, that is awful. That is irresponsible. You cannot do that. That is not maintaining the world properly. What do you think? Maybe that is maintaining the world properly. Maybe it is we who think that everything should be progressing who are destroying the world. Of course we are, by our Protestant ethic, by our notion of keeping everything in charge. It is true we have a great initial success. We destroy diseases, we keep people alive, but in the end there is the hydrogen bomb to get rid of it all entirely. So these non-political people are saying to us, the trouble with you is you do not know what you want. You have a future which you are working for, but you are all writ and no vomit. You promised yourselves that a good thing is going to happen. You keep promising. Even your money is a promise. It says on the dollar bill that the Treasury of the United States will promise to pay $1. What are you going to get if you deliver this and say, come on now, I want whatever it is this dollar is, and they just can give you credit because it is paper. It is all symbolism. So all these myriads of so-called primitive people, like the Amar Indians, Mexican Indians, Africans, do not communicate with us and we do not communicate with them because they do not want what we think is the desirable good society. Well, some of them do, of course. So in Japan, for example, the Japanese have been thoroughly convinced into the idea that the Western way of life is a great thing, and so they are by and large frantic industrialists. And as a result, the cities of Nara, Osaka, Kobe are covered in smog. Tokyo is just a madhouse. They are getting it. So the whole point is the future is an illusion. The basic ideas in the cosmology of Machiavelli is that in the course of time you go through a series of epochs, and you begin with a great state of affairs, and it gradually deteriorates. It is a way of saying to people, in the course of time things only fall apart, therefore get out of time, get off the wheel of the rat race. So this underlies my idea of what I call the politics of diversion, divert Western man from history. From the notion that he is in a historical process, which is leading to something always better and better, but which in fact only leads to more and more destruction. Divert people from time by living a style of life which is timeless, and which is therefore more attractive than life devoted to time. That does not exclude our technological power. Part of the whole point of technology is that through technology we have the power to obliterate poverty completely. But this must not be looked at in a historical way. As long as it is looked at in a historical way, it will not work. That is to say, the whole problem of money and the distribution of the wealth of the world as produced by technology is a psychological problem and not a material problem. People are hypnotized with money, which is the symbol of wealth, as if it was something that was valuable in its own right. That is the confusion of money with gold. When Machiavelli said that one of the evils of the world was gold, he was, I think, perhaps unconsciously, quite correct. There is a story that once upon a time all the banks in the world got tired of shipping gold from country to country, and so they decided to open an office on an island in the Pacific, where all the banks had their headquarters, and all the gold was put together there. So that all they needed to do when they had to exchange some gold was to trundle it across the street. Operations proceeded beautifully for about 10 years. Then all the heads of the banks from the different countries came with their wives and their children to visit the island and have a great convention. And so they inspected the books and the transactions, and everything was in perfect order. At last the children said, "Daddy, we want to see the gold." So the bank president said to the managers, "Take our children down to the vault so that they could see the gold." And all those managers said, "Well, it is sort of difficult and a little problematic, and it takes a lot of time." And the president said, "Well, do not be stupid. What is the matter? Can they not see the gold?" So they hummed and hawed and said, "Well, we are sorry to report that 7 years ago there was a disastrous subterranean earthquake, and all the gold was swallowed up. But of course we all knew how much we had at that time, and so we have kept the books accordingly. So it is a joke. People do not realize, in other words, that money is bookkeeping, nothing but bookkeeping. And therefore the whole idea of taxation, for example, is a complete anachronism. The thing that is stopping the flow of the actual wealth of the world is this fixation on money. What you need to do is actually reverse taxation and issue, instead of charging taxes, issue credit. But you have to keep the credit balance to the gross national product in some form of figuring. And then everybody can circulate what they are making. Otherwise you are in this ridiculous situation where people are starving in India, and we are hoarding food supplies and burning them and dumping them in the ocean, which is a sheer insanity. But it is all based on a psychological block about money. So this kind of psychological block is what in the philosophy of Machiavelli would be called an illusion. And it is the same kind of illusion as that of the future, the idea that the future is when we are really going to live. And if that is the way you operate, when you get there you are never going to be able to handle it, because you still want a future ahead of you. You are a perpetual donkey with a carrot suspended from your collar on a rod like this, pursuing you.